Hi Stampers, this is Kim with Great Inspirations. I'm so glad you joined me today. I have some card ideas I want to share with you, but not just how I designed a card or the colors I used or the paper I used, but some ideas to just step things up a bit when we feel like we want to send something special to someone, or we may feel we're in a rut and we want to do something a little different. Now, what I'm going to share with you is probably not anything new. You've probably seen it before. But I feel it's important to sometimes review things and remember things because I think that really helps our creative juices to get flowing. So, I really like these cards, and each and every one of these cards were inspired by my Stampin' Up! Catalog. Right here on page 94 of the catalog, you will see it's the Inked Botanicals Suite collection. And right here on page 95, it shows what the collection entails. And it has, of course, the Inked Botanicals Designer Series paper, some Lost Lagoon ribbon, and then this very pretty inked and tiled stamp set. And to go with the stamp set, to make it a bundle, there are these two punches, and I have used the punches before on cards. But one makes this nice little X shape, and the other one makes this sort of a 8-pointed star shape, like you had put a square in a square. So this page right here is where I got inspiration for my cards. But to take them up just a little bit, just another notch, I decided to not only make my cards, but to make coordinating envelopes. So that's one way to step up your card making. Just do a little stamping on your envelope. And also another way, do something on the inside. So there's that card. And I will show you where the inspiration for this card came from. It's on this page 94 again. I was looking, and I really liked this, how they had done like a collage stamping of those images. But I really liked this Designer Series paper. Actually, all the Designer Series paper that is in the Inked Botanicals collection, I love it. It's just colors that I like. So I thought, how can I combine these two and make a card? So that is where this card came in. I have my Designer Series paper, I have my collage-like stamping, and then I carried that through on the inside and then also on the envelope. Now, for the next card, right here, I liked this paper, of course. As I said, I liked all the papers. And so what I did, show you the inspiration for it. It's right here, this card. I didn't particularly care for punching out the area in the focal panel and then putting the sentiment in there. So I just left mine a panel and put my sentiment on another piece of cardstock and matted it. So here is my card, and then on the inside I sort of carried over the theme from the outside, and then I did the same, something on my envelope. But anyway, I did the same on the envelope flap and then on the front of the envelope. Now here I just added some of this Designer Series paper just to that envelope flap, just to step it up just a little bit. Now, this final card, its inspiration came from this card right here. I really liked this panel. I didn't much care for these shapes being on there, and I didn't much care for the tone on tone, although I sometimes do like tone on tone. So, I know it may be hard to see, but basically, this panel has been die cut with the deckled rectangles dies, and then there is a very light, and it's very difficult to see, image that has been stamped, and then it has been put through an embossing folder. So that's what I did on my card, only I just put my little focal panel on a mat and then put that on a card base. And I really liked the basic white with the Calypso coral. But as you can see, I've die cut my focal panel with the deckled rectangle dies. Then I stamped my image, which I had stamped off a time or two. Then I stamped it again. And then I ran it through an embossing folder. And in this case, I used the time-worn type. And I know it's very difficult to see it. But it just does add just that little nice bit of texture to the card. And then I use these brushed brass butterflies just for a little bit of embellishment. And then on the inside, I just stamped one of the images. Then for the envelope, again, I put some Designer Series paper on here. And had I been thinking, I would have dry embossed this panel with the time-worn type embossing folder. But I didn't think of it, and it looks great like this anyway. And then I just stamped the image right there on the front of the envelope. So I thought, now since you know where my inspiration was from and what I did, I thought we might kind of walk through putting these cards together. And just, let me show you the stamp set first. I know I showed it to you in the catalog, but it was sitting over here on the corner of my desk, and I just kind of forgot about it. It's called Inked and Tiled, and as you can see, it has several sentiments and then some great images that you can use to make really pretty cards. So, here is this card. Let's talk about this card. I'm going to bring in some supplies to make this card. Here are those pretty brushed brass butterflies. And then here is a card base. As you can see, I've used Designer Series paper that has the same colors, but it's just a little different design. Here is my panel that goes across the center of the card. And here is a very vanilla envelope that we will together work on decorating. But what I wanted to show you about this card is when I was looking for another Designer Series paper, I was like, ooh, I really like this. It has those same colors. I really like it. But if I put this, depending on where I cut it, you might just see the stems, and then you might see really tall flowers, or you might see the flowers down here and just stems up here. So what I did to resolve that issue, in my mind anyway, was I cut this, I took a piece of this and cut it at 3 3/4 by 5, and then I took a piece of just printer paper and I cut it at 3 3/4 by 5. So then I took my DSP that was 3 3/4 by 5, and along the 3 3/4 inch I cut it down the center at 1 7/8. And then all you have to do is adhere this to the Designer Series paper. I want the flowers going up on this one and then pointing down on this one. So when you adhere this together, this becomes your panel. You can put the adhesive on the back of the printer paper. It'll work just fine, and then that becomes your panel for your card. So let me put that away, and we'll grab some dimensionals. Actually, before we do the dimensionals, let's put some of these butterflies on our card. Okay. Here's the little small ones. They're just so cute. Oops. Maybe I'll get it on there today. There we go. There's one, and then we'll use a bigger one, the bigger ones. And one more. Of course, you can use any colors ink that you want. You can use any kind of embellishments you want, just whatever. That's up to you. These are just some samples, just showing you where I got my ideas and how I kind of step things up a bit. And then I'm just going to put some dimensionals on here, and we'll get this on the card. Oh, maybe one down here. Now, this seam is going to be totally hidden by this panel. So that works out super, super great. Now you can see here, there's a little ink. I just took a little bit of the Lost Lagoon ink and a sponge dauber and went along the edges. I did the same for this piece. And then on the inside, I don't know why I didn't do it on this. Maybe I should have. But then here's the inside of the card. And now we want to move along and we want to create this envelope. So we'll get our very vanilla envelope. And I like to start with the flap first. You do not have to. I'm going to show this so I'll remember what I did. And let's use a little bit of Petal Pink ink. And I'm going to ink up this stamp. It kind of looks like some brush strokes. And then I'm going to stamp it off. And then just going to stamp. You can just stamp randomly. I think I should have stamped off twice. It's a little darker. There we go. Now we're going to get the daffodil. No, it's crushed curry. I was going to use Daffodil Delight, but I decided to stick with the plan there and use some crushed curry for the flowers. I'm going to stamp off again. I stamped, and then I stamped. Clean that one off. And then we'll move along to the Lost Lagoon. And now this is a lot darker than some of the colors. So I stamped off twice. We stamped, and then I inked it up, and I stamped off twice again. And I stamped. So there is the flap. And then on the front, just right there, I need to get the Petal Pink again. Stamp off, stamp off. I'm running out of space. Stamp. Then ink it up again, stamp off, and then I just kind of put some right along there. Then we'll go back to our Daffodil Delight. And we'll ink this up, stamp off. I think I'll just stamp off once this time. Stamp. Stamp. Put that away. And now we need our Lost Lagoon. And there is our envelope. we have an envelope for this card. And we have the card together. So we'll move on to this card. Now this card, it's really, really simple to do. You just do your stamping sort of like what I just did here. And, you know, stamp off. I think this I did full strength. Then for this little stamp right here, it's crushed curry, and I stamped off. And then, as I said, on the inside, just carried that theme over. And then for the envelope on the front, stamped, just carried, as I said, carried the theme, just carried it over. And then on the back, I put this. So, what we're going to do is I'm going to bring in the pieces for this card. But we're not going to stamp and put it together. I don't think. I thought I had one. Oh, here it is. Here it is. This one is assembled. But these are the pieces. See, I have the mat for the background, and then I have this for a focal panel, and then a mat for it. Now, all these measurements and all the supplies, they will be on my coordinating blog post. And the link to that will be in the description of this video, so you don't have to worry about the colors, the sizes, or anything like that. And then here's my happy birthday that is stamped on basic white and then matted on the Calypso Coral, and it would go here. And then of course we need an inside panel, and this one happens to be, I believe this one is 4 by 5 1/4. And when we do all of our stamping, just like we did on the other card, this is what we will have. Like I said, there's the inside. But what we're going to work on is that envelope. So this, I know I stamped on that one. I decided, because see, this was the background for this. But I decided for this card, this background, it was a little dark to be stamping on. So I decided not to stamp on that one, but just to put it on there. And I'll show you how I did that. Now, some of you may think this is backwards, but I took my envelope and I put the flap right here on my mat. And then I used Stampin' Seal. You can use liquid glue if you want, or Stampin' Seal Plus, or whatever. And I just kind of went along the edges of the envelope, flap, and then in the center here. And then I turn my envelope up like this so I can really take my piece of paper, my Designer Series paper, and just really get it right on that crease. I put it down. And then all we're going to do is trim around this. Now this piece of paper is about 2 inches wide, which works out perfectly if you cut this 4 by 5 1/4. You're going to have a piece left that's 2 by 6, because this is 6 by 6 paper. So this is one way to use up some scraps that you might not otherwise use. We're just going to trim around this. There we go. There's our envelope flap. And then matches our card. And just like I did for this one, you would want to go ahead and stamp on the front. And you would use the color, whatever color your flower was, and your leaf. Those were the colors that you would use here on the front. So that's how I did this envelope. So as you saw with this one, we just stamped on it. On this one, we added a little Designer Series paper and some stamping if you like. And now we're going to move to this card. Now, this card is super, super simple. We've already talked about how you can stamp, ink your image, stamp it off, stamp, and then stamp again. But the thing we need to be careful of with this card is you want to die cut your panel, then stamp, and then put it through the embossing folder. And here's another sample I have right here. This is just run through a different embossing folder. I use the time-worn type on this one, and this one, it is the exposed brick. I know it's a little hard to see, but there is some really nice texture on there. But if you do not die cut your panel, stamp, and then emboss, you'll get something that looks like this. I die cut it, then I embossed it, and then I stamped, and it just isn't quite as clear as when you stamp first and then emboss. So, lesson learned. So anyway, these are just some ideas. And on this one, all I did, as you can see, I just put the Designer Series paper on there and did a little stamping, and then I just stamped the leaf on the front. So these are just some ideas that, like I say, they're nothing new. We've all probably heard it before, but just a few ways to kind of step that card making up just a little bit, and then someone will receive these pretty cards and go, oh, wow, she really outdid herself this time. Or maybe just, oh, wow. But I think that people who are not card makers, they appreciate all the things that we do that we just don't give a thought to. Now, is it okay to send a card to someone that doesn't have the envelope decorated up? Of course it is. Is it okay to send a card to someone that doesn't have the inside decorated? Of course it is. But these are just ways that sometimes just kind of helps you get out of the rut a little bit and do something that's familiar but still a little different. Well, that's all I have for you for today. I want to thank you for joining me. And until next time, stamp happy.